The marble floors gleamed like frozen water under my knees, each stroke of my cloth creating wet circles that evaporated within seconds. 5:30 in the morning, and the Rothschild Tower penthouse smelled of imported leather, aged whiskey, and something darker, something that reminded me of my father's funeral. Money. Old money. The kind that came with blood price tags I couldn't begin to comprehend. My hands ached. They always did at this hour, when the city below was still wrapped in that peculiar darkness before dawn, when even the streetlights seemed tired. I'd been scrubbing floors since midnight, part of the emergency cleaning crew called in for what my supervisor had whispered was the most important morning of Mr. Rothschild's life. She hadn't elaborated. She never did. People like me, invisible, replaceable, drowning in debt from my daughter's medical bills, we didn't get elaborations. We got orders. 3rd floor, east wing, and don't you dare touch anything on his desk. Don't even breathe near those papers. I hadn't planned to. I'd learned long ago that survival meant keeping your head down, your eyes lowered, your existence as minimal as possible. At 26, I'd already mastered the art of being a ghost. My daughter Emma needed me to be a ghost who could pay for her leukemia treatments, who could afford the experimental drug that might give her more than 6 months. The penthouse stretched before me like a cathedral of wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a New York City skyline beginning to bruise with pre-dawn purple. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen tears. Every surface screamed of a world I'd never touch, never belong to, never understand. I was just passing through, leaving it cleaner than I found it, erasing any evidence that someone like me had ever been here. But then I saw the office. The double doors stood open, unusual. My supervisor had said everything should be locked. And light spilled out like an invitation I knew better than to accept. Yet something pulled me forward. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the way the light fell across the threshold, soft and golden, so different from the harsh fluorescence of the hospital where I spent every other moment of my life. Maybe I was just tired of being invisible. The office was a study in masculine power. Dark wood panels, leather chairs the color of dried blood, and a desk. God, that desk. It was massive, carved from what looked like a single piece of ebony, and covered in papers. Stacks and stacks of papers, each one probably worth more than my entire year's salary. I shouldn't have looked. I knew I shouldn't have looked, but my eyes caught on the top document, and my heart stopped. Bankruptcy filing. Rothschild Enterprises, effective 8:09 a.m. The words blurred and sharpened, blurred and sharpened. I couldn't breathe. Everyone knew the Rothschild name. Dmitri Rothschild, the man who owned half of Manhattan, who had built an empire from the ashes of his father's criminal organization, who had, according to whispered rumors among the cleaning staff, never lost a single business deal, never showed weakness, never bent. And here was his bankruptcy filing. My fingers clutched the mop handle until my knuckles went white. I should walk away. I should finish cleaning and disappear back into my invisible life. But something was wrong. I could feel it the same way I'd felt it when the doctor had handed me Emma's diagnosis with trembling hands, when the numbers hadn't added up, when I'd spent 3 days checking and rechecking until I'd found the decimal point error that meant the difference between 6 months and 2 years. Numbers were the only thing I'd ever been good at. The only thing my mother had taught me before the cancer took her when I was 16. Numbers don't lie, sweetheart. People do, but numbers tell the truth if you know how to listen. I was listening now. My eyes scanned the document, and even though I had no business reading a billionaire's private papers, even though I could lose this job, my only job, I couldn't look away. Revenue projections, asset liquidations, debt consolidations, the numbers swam before my eyes and then... There. Line 47, subsection C. Asset valuation for the Rothschild Maritime Holdings, $847,000. But the total on page 3 listed it as $84,700,000. A decimal point. One missing zero. One simple, catastrophic mistake that would render his bankruptcy filing invalid, that would expose him to... I didn't even know what. Fraud charges? Criminal investigation? In my world, mistakes like this meant eviction notices. In his world, they probably meant prison. Or worse. My breath came in short, sharp gasps. The clock on the wall read 5:47 a.m. Somewhere in this massive penthouse, Dmitri Rothschild was probably sleeping, unaware that in just over 2 hours, his entire world would implode because someone had misplaced a decimal point. I should walk away. God. I should walk away. But then I thought of Emma, of the doctor who'd almost prescribed the wrong dosage because of a similar error, of how I'd caught it just in time, how my obsessive need to check and recheck numbers had saved my daughter's life. What if I could save his? The thought was absurd, laughable. A maid saving a billionaire mafia boss. It sounded like a bad romance novel. But my feet were already moving, my hand already reaching for the paper, my other hand fishing the pen from the desk holder. I could fix it. Just add the 0. Just correct the mistake and slip away before anyone knew I'd been here, before anyone knew I'd touched something I had no business touching. The pen hovered over the paper. That's when I heard it. The whisper of expensive fabric. The subtle displacement of air that meant someone very large, very dangerous, was standing right behind me. What? A voice said. Low, controlled, wrapped in an accent that spoke of Moscow winters and Brooklyn streets. Do you think you're doing? I froze. The pen fell from my nerveless fingers, clattering against the desk with a sound like a gunshot. My heart hammered so hard I thought my ribs might crack. Slowly. So slowly. I turned around. He stood in the doorway like a dark angel. Dmitri Rothschild. Even in the pre-dawn shadows, even wearing nothing but black silk pajama bottoms that hung low on his hips, even with his dark hair mussed from sleep, he radiated danger. It came off him in waves, the kind of danger that didn't need to shout, didn't need to threaten, because it simply was. He was younger than I'd imagined, maybe 35, with sharp Slavic features that could have been carved from the same stone as his desk. His eyes were the color of Arctic ice, pale gray-blue and utterly unreadable. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, giving him a permanently sardonic expression. His chest was bare, revealing tattoos that snaked across his skin. Russian prison tattoos, the kind that told stories of violence and survival I couldn't begin to comprehend. But it was his stillness that terrified me most. He didn't move, didn't blink, just watched me with those ice-chip eyes while I trembled like a rabbit caught in a trap. I asked you a question. His voice was quieter now, which somehow made it worse. What are you doing at my desk? My mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. My brain screamed at me to speak, to explain, to do something other than stand here like a frightened child, but terror had turned my tongue to stone. He took a step forward, then another. Each movement was deliberate, controlled, like a predator who knew his prey couldn't escape. The scent of him reached me, expensive cologne, something with notes of cedar and smoke, and underneath it something metallic, like copper, like blood. You're the new girl. It wasn't a question. The one with the sick daughter, Emma, isn't it? 7 years old. Leukemia. Presbyterian Hospital, room 407. Ice water flooded my veins. He knew. Of course he knew. Men like him knew everything about everyone who entered their world, even the ghosts who cleaned their floors. My voice cracked. I tried again. I was just touching my bankruptcy filing. He was close now. So close I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. So close I could see the slight dilation of his pupils, the barely perceptible tick of a muscle in his jaw. Do you have any idea what happens to people who touch my private documents? I shook my head, tears burning behind my eyes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. There's a mistake. A mistake. In the numbers. Line 47, subsection C. The Maritime Holdings. The decimal point is... His hand shot out and I flinched, expecting violence. But he didn't touch me. His fingers hovered inches from my face, trembling with restraint I could feel vibrating in the air between us. Show me, he said softly. Carefully. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the paper, but I pointed to the error, showed him the discrepancy between the asset valuation and the total. Watched as his eyes, those terrible, beautiful ice-chip eyes, widened almost imperceptibly. He stared at the numbers for what felt like an eternity, Then his gaze lifted to mine, and something in his expression shifted. Something I couldn't name, but that made every hair on my body stand on end. "What's your name?" he asked. Sarah Chen. Sarah Chen." He repeated it like he was tasting each syllable. "Do you know what you've just done?" I shook my head, unable to speak past the terror clogging my throat. He reached past me, so close I could feel the heat of his body, and picked up his phone. Pressed a button. "Victor, my office, now, and bring the filing team. All of them. We have exactly—" He glanced at the clock. 2 hours and 7 minutes to fix a mistake that would have destroyed everything. He ended the call and turned back to me. This time, when his hand moved, it did touch me. His fingers caught my chin, tilting my face up to his, with a gentleness that contradicted everything else about him. "You just saved my empire, little ghost," he murmured. "The question is, what am I going to do with you now?" They came like shadows summoned by a darker shadow. Within minutes, the penthouse flooded with men in expensive suits, each one moving with the same coiled tension that radiated from Dimitri. I pressed myself against the bookshelf, trying to disappear into the leather-bound spines and mahogany shelves, but his hand on my wrist kept me anchored in place. Not painfully. His grip was almost gentle, but absolutely, like a shackle made of warm flesh, an unspoken threat. "Don't move," he'd whispered, his breath ghosting across my ear. "Don't speak unless I tell you to, and don't look any of them in the eye." I nodded, my heart still jackhammering against my ribs. The men gathered around his desk like wolves around a kill. I recognized the hierarchy immediately, the way the others deferred to a massive bear of a man with a shaved head and a scar that split his face from temple to jaw. Victor, I assumed. His eyes found me, assessed me in one brutal second, then dismissed me as inconsequential. I'd never been so grateful to be invisible. "Show me," Dimitri commanded, releasing my wrist to stride to his desk. I watched as they hunched over the documents, their voices low and urgent. Russian phrases I couldn't understand, punctuated with English curse words I knew too well. The sky outside began to lighten, that bruised purple giving way to pale gray. And with each passing minute, the tension in the room ratcheted higher. "How did we miss this?" someone hissed. "It doesn't matter how." Dimitri's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "What matters is that we fix it, now. Peterson, get our legal team on video conference. Mikhail, I need the corrected valuations printed and bound within 90 minutes. Victor, already calling the judge's clerk." The scarred man had his phone pressed to his ear. "We'll need to file an emergency amendment. It'll raise questions." "Let them question." Dimitri's eyes were on the papers, but I could see his mind working, calculating, strategizing. Better questions than criminal fraud charges, or prison. The word hung in the air like smoke. Prison. I thought of Emma, of who would take care of her if I went to prison for tampering with legal documents. My hands started shaking again. Dimitri's gaze snapped to me. For a heartbeat, our eyes met. And I saw something flicker in that ice-blue depths. Recognition, maybe, or calculation. Then he turned back to his men. "And someone get her coffee. She looks like she's about to pass out." "I'm fine," I whispered, but the room tilted slightly, betraying me. A younger man, barely out of his 20s, with nervous eyes and ink-stained fingers, pressed a crystal cup into my hands. The coffee was black, strong enough to strip paint, and I drank it gratefully while chaos swirled around me. I should have been afraid. I was afraid. But beneath the terror, something else stirred. Fascination. I'd spent my entire life on the edges of other people's worlds, cleaning their messes, invisible in their important moments. And now I stood at the center of something massive. Something that would either save or destroy the man who dominated the room with nothing more than his presence. Time blurred. The sky turned from gray to pink, to pale gold. The men worked with military precision, phones pressed to ears, laptops open, printers spitting out page after page of corrected documents. Dimitri orchestrated it all from his desk, his voice never rising above that controlled, lethal calm, but every person in the room jumped at his smallest gesture. At 7:23 a.m., Victor approached him with a leather portfolio. "It's done. The amended filing is ready. Courier is waiting downstairs to take it to the courthouse. Dimitri took the portfolio, opened it, scanned the contents with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. Then he looked at me. Sarah, come here. Every eye in the room turned to me. I felt their weight like physical things. Surprise, curiosity, and in some cases something that looked like pity. My legs moved without my permission, carrying me to his desk on feet that felt disconnected from my body. He held out the document. Check it. Every number, every decimal point. I want your eyes on this before it leaves this building. I'm not qualified to... You caught what 7 lawyers and 3 accountants missed. His voice was soft, but something in it made my stomach flip. You're more qualified than anyone else in this room. Check it. My hands trembled as I took the portfolio. The paper felt expensive, heavy with watermarks and embossed seals. I forced my eyes to focus, to do what I did best. Find the truth in numbers, line by line, page by page. I checked every figure, every calculation, every reference. It was perfect. It's correct, I whispered, handing it back to him. His fingers brushed mine as he took it, and electricity shot up my arm. Our eyes met, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw past the ice to something that burned underneath. Something hungry. Good. He handed the portfolio to Victor. File it. And Victor, make sure Sarah gets home safely. Have someone drive her. Relief flooded through me so intensely I almost staggered. I was being dismissed, released. I could go back to my daughter, to my invisible life, and pretend this night had never happened. Thank you, I breathed. Thank you so much. I need to go. My shift. Your shift is over. Dimitri stood, and suddenly we were too close again, the heat of him overwhelming in the cool morning air. You've done enough for one day. Victor will take you home. But as I turned to leave, his hand caught my elbow. Gentle. Always gentle. But inescapable. Sarah. He waited until I looked up at him. You saved my empire today. That's not a debt I take lightly. If you or your daughter ever need anything at all, you call this number. He pressed a business card into my palm, his fingers lingering just a fraction too long. Day or night, it doesn't matter. You call, and I answer. I stared at the card. Heavy cardstock, black with silver lettering. Just a phone number. No name. No title. But I could feel the weight of it, the promise it represented. I can't. You can. His thumb brushed across the inside of my wrist, finding my racing pulse. The corner of his mouth lifted in something that wasn't quite a smile. You already have, little ghost. Don't disappear on me now. Then Victor was there, his massive presence like a wall between me and Dimitri, and I was being ushered out of the office, down the elevator, into the morning bright streets where a black Mercedes waited with windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. The ride home passed in a blur. Victor said nothing, but I felt his eyes on me in the rearview mirror, assessing, calculating. When we pulled up in front of my apartment building, a crumbling pre-war walk-up in a neighborhood where the Mercedes looked like a spaceship, he finally spoke. He doesn't give out that number lightly. His voice was surprisingly gentle for a man who looked like he could break steel with his bare hands. Whatever happens now, be careful. Dimitri Rothschild saves what he considers his. The words sent ice down my spine. I don't belong to anyone. Victor's laugh was dark, knowing. Tell him that. See how well it goes. I fled into my building before I could ask what he meant. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and despair, familiar as my own skin. I'd gone home only long enough to shower and change, to scrub away the scent of expensive cologne and danger, but I could still feel Dimitri's fingers on my wrist like a brand. Emma was awake when I slipped into her room, her small face lighting up the way it always did when she saw me. 7 years old and already so brave, so much stronger than I'd ever been. Mommy! She reached for me with thin arms, and I gathered her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and hospital soap. You're late. The nurses said you were working late. I was, baby. I'm sorry. I pressed a kiss to her forehead, checking for fever out of habit. How are you feeling? Okay. Tired. She snuggled against me, her small body so fragile it terrified me. Doctor, Martinez says I can maybe go home next week if my numbers are good. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I blinked back tears. Home. As if our one-bedroom apartment could ever be a real home. Not when every surface was covered in medical bills I couldn't pay, when the electricity had been shut off twice last month, when the landlord's eviction notice still sat on the kitchen counter like a ticking time bomb. Mommy. Emma's voice was soft, worried. Why are you crying? I'm not crying. I'm just happy. I smiled through the tears, wiping them away quickly. So happy you're feeling better. She didn't believe me. Emma was too smart for her own good. But she let it go, settling back against her pillows. Tell me a story? About the princess who saved the kingdom? I told her the story I'd told 100 times before. About a brave princess who fought dragons and rescued herself. And as I spoke, my hand drifted to my pocket, to the card that felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric. If you or your daughter ever need anything at all, you call this number. The words whispered through my mind like temptation, like salvation, like damnation. I couldn't call. I wouldn't. Men like Dmitri Rothschild didn't give something for nothing. There would be a price. And I'd learned long ago that prices paid in desperation were always too high. But then, Doctor. Martinez knocked on the door, his expression carefully neutral in that way that meant bad news. He asked to speak to me in the hall, and my heart dropped to my feet. The experimental treatment, he said quietly, his eyes full of the pity I'd learned to hate. The pharmaceutical company denied your application for the compassionate use program. I'm sorry, Sarah. Without it, we're looking at standard chemotherapy protocols that might buy us 6 months. Maybe a year if we're lucky. 6 months. The words echoed in my skull. 6 months. A year if we were lucky. There has to be something else. My voice didn't sound like mine. Another trial, another option. I'll work more shifts. The treatment costs $250,000. Dr. Martinez's hand was warm on my shoulder. Even if you could qualify for the trial, they're not accepting new participants for another 8 months. I'm so sorry. 8 months. Emma might not have 8 months. I walked back into her room on numb legs. She'd fallen asleep, her small chest rising and falling with that papery quality that meant her body was working too hard, fighting too hard, dying too hard. My hand closed around the card in my pocket. Day or night. It doesn't matter. You call, and I answer. I pulled out my phone, stared at the black card with its silver numbers, thought about Victor's warning. Dmitri Rothschild saves what he considers his. But Emma was mine, my daughter, my heart. My entire world. If selling my soul to a devil could save her, then I'd damn myself gladly. My fingers were shaking so badly it took 3 tries to dial the number. It rang once. Sarah. His voice was dark honey, knowing, unsurprised, as if he'd been waiting for this call. Tell me what you need. And God help me, I did. The restaurant was the kind of place I'd only seen in movies, all crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths, where the waiters moved like dancers and the air smelled of money and secrets. I didn't belong here. My reflection in the gilded mirrors told me that with brutal clarity. Discount store dress, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, hands still rough from industrial cleaning solutions. But Dmitri had insisted on meeting here. Dinner, he'd said on the phone, his voice leaving no room for argument. 8 o'clock. I'll send a car. That had been 6 hours ago. 6 hours of terror and second-guessing and staring at Emma's sleeping face while wondering what price I was about to pay. The Mercedes had arrived exactly at 7:30. Victor behind the wheel again, his scarred face impassive as he'd held the door open for me. Now I sat at a corner table, the most private in the restaurant, watching the door with my heart in my throat. Around me, wealthy patrons laughed and clinked glasses, completely unaware that their world and mine existed on different planets. A waiter had already come by twice to ask if I needed anything, his eyes polite but assessing, probably wondering what someone like me was doing in a place like this. Then the energy in the room shifted. I felt it before I saw him, the way conversations stuttered, the way heads turned, the way the air itself seemed to compress. Dmitri entered flanked by 2 men I didn't recognize, both built like walls and wearing suits that couldn't quite hide the bulges of shoulder holsters. But it was Dmitri who commanded every eye. He wore black tonight. Black suit, black shirt, no tie. The casualness of it somehow made him more dangerous, more powerful. His hair was swept back, revealing the sharp angles of his face, that scar through his eyebrow catching the light. He moved through the restaurant like a king through his domain, and I watched as the maitre d' practically bowed before him. His eyes found mine across the room, and the smile that curved his lips made my stomach flip. He dismissed his guards with a gesture, and they melted into the background, still present, still watching, but invisible in the way that professionals knew how to be. Then he was walking toward me, and I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but sit frozen as he approached. Sarah. He stopped beside the table, and I realized I was supposed to stand, to greet him, to do something other than stare like a deer in headlights. But before I could move, he'd placed his hand on my shoulder, keeping me seated. Don't. You look perfect exactly where you are. He slid into the seat across from me, and immediately a waiter appeared with a bottle of wine I knew I couldn't pronounce. Dimitri waved him away without breaking eye contact. You came, he said softly. You didn't give me much choice. The words came out sharper than I'd intended, fear making me brave or stupid or both. His smile widened, showing teeth. I always give choices, little ghost. You could have said no, hung up the phone, disappeared back into your invisible life. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, his presence overwhelming even across the white linen expanse. But you didn't. You called me. You came here. You chose this. My daughter is dying. My voice cracked on the words. That's not a choice. That's desperation. Yes. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or memory. I know what desperation looks like. I was born in it, raised in it, built my empire from it. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine where they clutched my water glass. So let me be very clear about what I'm offering you, Sarah. No games, no manipulation. Just truth. I pulled my hand back, but the ghost of his touch remained, burning. What do you want from me? First, let me tell you what I'm giving you. He leaned back, completely at ease, while I felt like I was falling apart. Emma's treatment. The experimental drug she needs. I've already made the necessary calls. Dr. Martinez will receive confirmation tomorrow morning that she's been accepted into the trial. Full coverage, no cost to you. Additionally, I'm paying off your medical debts. All of them. And your apartment? I've bought your building. You'll never receive another eviction notice. The words hit me like physical blows. I couldn't process them. Couldn't breathe around them. That's too much. I can't possibly... I'm not finished. His voice cut through my panic like a blade. Your daughter will receive the best care available, not just for her leukemia, but everything. Private room, specialist nurses, whatever she needs for as long as she needs it. You'll never have to choose between her life and paying rent again. Tears burned behind my eyes. Why? Why would you do this? Because you saved my empire when you had no reason to. Because you saw a mistake that would have destroyed everything I've built. And instead of walking away, instead of protecting yourself, you risked everything to fix it. He paused, and something dark and hungry moved across his features. And because I want you, Sarah Chen. I want you in a way that defies logic or reason. I've wanted you since I saw you standing at my desk with my bankruptcy filing in your hands, your fingers shaking but your eyes sharp, seeing what no one else could see. My heart hammered so hard I thought everyone in the restaurant must hear it. I don't understand. You could have anyone. Why would you want me? The same reason you noticed the decimal point. He leaned forward again, and his hand captured mine before I could pull away. His thumb traced circles on my palm, sending electricity up my arm. You see what others miss. You exist in the shadows, invisible, and yet you notice everything. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How valuable? I'm a maid. The words tasted bitter. I clean floors. I'm nobody. You're the woman who saved my empire. His grip tightened, just slightly, just enough to remind me of the strength coiled beneath that expensive suit. You're the woman whose daughter will live because I will make it so. You're the woman who will belong to me if you agree to my terms. There it was. The price. I'd known it was coming, but hearing it spoken aloud still made my blood run cold. What terms? I whispered. He released my hand, but only to signal the waiter. Food appeared. Courses I hadn't ordered, dishes I couldn't name, each one a work of art on pristine white plates. He served me himself, his movements precise and controlled, and I understood it was a demonstration of care, of possession, of what life could be if I agreed to whatever devil's bargain he was about to propose. Eat, he commanded gently. Then we'll talk. I couldn't taste anything. Every bite was ash in my mouth. But I forced myself to eat because he watched me with those ice chip eyes, and I understood that this too was a test. When my plate was half empty and I couldn't swallow another bite, he finally spoke. I want you to move into my penthouse. You and Emma. I'll provide everything you need. Clothes, food, security, medical care. You'll want for nothing. As what? My voice was barely audible. Your mistress? As mine. The word was simple. Absolute. Not a mistress, not a girlfriend, not a temporary arrangement. Mine, Sarah, completely, absolutely, in every way that matters. I should have been repulsed, should have thrown the wine in his face and walked out. But I thought of Emma, of her small body fighting a battle she couldn't win without help I couldn't provide. I thought of medical bills and eviction notices and the endless, grinding terror of watching my daughter die because I was too poor, too powerless, too invisible to save her. I don't love you, I said finally. I don't even know you. Love can grow. His expression didn't change, but something in his voice softened, or it won't. Either way, Emma lives. You live. You'll be protected, provided for, safe. All I ask is that you give me the chance to prove I can be what you need. And if I say no? He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes holding mine. Then Emma still gets her treatment. Your debts still disappear. I don't punish children for their mother's choices, Sarah. But you go back to your invisible life. You clean other people's floors. You watch other people's happiness from the shadows. And you never know what could have been. It wasn't a threat. Somehow that made it worse. He was giving me a choice, a real choice. And both options terrified me equally. I need time, I whispered. I need to think about this. No. His hand covered mine again, firm and warm and inescapable. You called me tonight because Emma is dying and you're out of options. Tomorrow she starts treatment. Tomorrow your life changes. The only question is whether you change it halfway or completely. Decide now, Sarah. Are you mine? Or are you still just a ghost? The restaurant spun around me, faces blurred, sounds faded. There was only him, only those ice blue eyes that saw through every defense I'd ever built. Only the warmth of his hand on mine, and the promise of salvation in his words. I thought of Emma sleeping in her hospital bed, so small and so brave. I thought of the experimental drug that could save her life. I thought of never having to scrub floors at 5 a.m, never having to choose between food and medicine, never having to be invisible again. What happens if I agree and then change my mind? My voice was steadier than I felt. What if I decide I can't do this? His thumb traced my pulse point, feeling the frantic beat of my heart. Then you tell me, and we renegotiate. I'm not a monster, Sarah. I don't keep prisoners. But know this. Once you're mine, I protect what's mine. Completely. Obsessively. With everything I have and everything I am. You won't just be choosing a new life. You'll be choosing me. All of me. The good and the terrible and everything in between. The terrible, I echoed. You mean the Mafia, the violence, the things you do that make men like Victor follow you? Yes. No apology in his voice. No shame. I'm not a good man, Sarah. I've killed. I've hurt people. I've done things that would make you run screaming if you knew the details. But I've also built something from nothing. I've protected my people. I've survived when everyone expected me to die. And I will protect you and Emma with the same ruthlessness I've used to build my empire. He stood then, coming around the table to stand beside me. His hand cupped my face, tilting it up to his, and I saw it clearly in his eyes. The hunger, the darkness, the absolute certainty that I was already his, that this decision had been made the moment I'd touched his bankruptcy filing. "Say yes, little ghost," he murmured, his thumb brushing across my lower lip. "Say yes, and let me save you the way you saved me." I closed my eyes, thought of Emma, thought of survival, thought of the choice that wasn't really a choice at all. "Yes," I whispered. His smile was triumph and possession, and something that looked almost like relief. "Good. Victor will take you to the penthouse tonight. Your things will be moved tomorrow. And Sarah..." He waited until I opened my eyes, until I was looking directly at him. "You won't regret this. I promise you that." But as he led me out of the restaurant, his hand possessive on the small of my back, Victor's words echoed in my mind. Dmitri Rothschild saves what he considers his. I'd just become his. Now I had to figure out what that really meant. The penthouse looked different at night. Softer, more intimate, but also more dangerous. Shadows pooled in corners that had gleamed with morning light. The city stretched beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows like a carpet of stars, and I stood alone in the master bedroom, staring at my reflection in a mirror that probably cost more than my entire year's salary. Victor had brought me here an hour ago, his scarred face revealing nothing as he'd shown me through rooms that felt more like a museum than a home. "Mr. Rothschild will be late," he'd said. "Business to attend to." He said to make yourself comfortable. Comfortable. As if I could ever be comfortable in a place like this, wearing a silk nightgown that had been laid out on the bed. Black, expensive, completely inappropriate for someone like me. But my own clothes were gone, packed up by efficient hands I'd never seen, and the penthouse suddenly felt less like salvation and more like a gilded cage. I thought of Emma, still sleeping in her hospital room. Dr. Martinez had called me just as Victor was driving me here, his voice thick with confusion and wonder. "I don't know how you did it, Sarah, but Emma's been accepted into the trial. They're starting treatment tomorrow morning. This is a miracle. A miracle bought with my body, my freedom, my soul. I'd made the deal. Now I had to live with it." The sound of the elevator made me jump. I turned from the mirror, my heart racing, as footsteps echoed through the penthouse. Heavy. Confident. His. Dmitri appeared in the doorway, and my breath caught. He'd removed his jacket, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms roped with muscle and ink. There was blood on his knuckles, just a few drops, but unmistakable. His eyes swept over me, and the hunger in them made my skin prickle with awareness and fear. "Beautiful," he murmured, stepping into the room. "I knew you would be. You're hurt." The words escaped before I could stop them. He glanced at his hand, then back at me, something like amusement flickering across his features. This is nothing. Just a reminder to someone who forgot their place." He moved to the bathroom, and I heard water running. When he returned, his hands were clean. But I couldn't stop thinking about whose blood I'd seen. "Are they..." I swallowed hard. "Are they alive?" "Yes." He crossed to the bed, sitting on its edge, watching me with those unreadable ice-blue eyes. "I don't kill people for small infractions, Sarah. Only for betrayal, or for threatening what's mine." The way he said mine made something twist low in my stomach. Fear, and something else. Something I didn't want to name. "I don't know how to do this," I whispered. "I don't know how to be what you want. Come here." It was a command. Gentle, but absolute. My feet moved before my brain could catch up, carrying me across the plush carpet until I stood before him. He reached out, his hands settling on my hips, pulling me between his legs. Even sitting, he was tall enough that we were nearly eye to eye. "You saved my empire," he said softly, his thumbs tracing circles through the silk. "You risked everything for a stranger because you saw a mistake and you couldn't let it stand. Do you have any idea how extraordinary that is? It was just numbers." My voice trembled. "I'm good with numbers. It was integrity." His hand moved up, cupping the back of my neck, his fingers tangling in my hair. It was courage. It was everything I've spent my entire life looking for and never finding. He pulled me closer, until his forehead rested against mine. I don't need you to be anything other than who you are, Sarah. I just need you to be here, with me. Mine. I don't understand. Tears burned behind my eyes. You could have anyone. Models, actresses, women who know how to exist in your world. Why me? His laugh was dark, bitter. Those women. They want my money, my power, the image of being with Dmitri Rothschild. They see what I've built and think they want it. But you looked at my bankruptcy filing and saw a decimal point error. You looked at me and saw a man who needed help, not an empire to conquer. His grip tightened, just slightly. Do you know what my father taught me, Sarah? Before he died and left me his criminal empire, I shook my head, unable to speak. He taught me that everyone has a price. Everyone can be bought, controlled, manipulated. And for 20 years, I've lived by that rule. I've built my empire on understanding exactly what people want and using it against them. His eyes searched mine, and for the first time, I saw something vulnerable beneath the ice. But you didn't want anything from me. You just wanted to fix the mistake. You didn't even know who I was. I knew who you were, I whispered. Everyone knows who you are. No. His hand slid down to cup my face. They know the name, the reputation, the man who owns half of Manhattan and has blood on his hands. But you saw me standing in my office at dawn, disheveled and vulnerable, and your first instinct wasn't fear or greed. It was help. He pulled me even closer, until his lips were inches from mine. That's who I want, Sarah. Not some perfectly polished woman who knows how to play society games. You, real, honest, mine. Before I could respond, his mouth found mine. The kiss was nothing like I'd expected. Not brutal or demanding, but achingly gentle, as if I was something precious that might break. His lips moved against mine with a tenderness that contradicted everything else about him, and I felt myself melting into it, into him, despite every instinct screaming at me to pull away. When he finally broke the kiss, we were both breathing hard. His hand still cradled my face, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone. We don't have to do anything tonight, he murmured. I'm not a monster, Sarah. I won't force you. We'll take this as slowly as you need. Relief flooded through me, so intense it made my knees weak. Thank you. He smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look younger, almost vulnerable. Come to bed. Just sleep. Let me hold you. Let me prove that I meant what I said about protecting you. I should have refused. Should have demanded my own room, my own space, my own boundaries. But exhaustion dragged at my bones. Exhaustion from years of fighting, of surviving, of being invisible. And something in his eyes, in the gentle way he held me, made me believe that maybe, just maybe, I could trust him with this one thing. I crawled into the massive bed, and he followed, pulling me against his chest, his arms wrapped around me, solid and warm and safe in a way I hadn't felt since my mother died. His heart beat steady beneath my ear, and his fingers traced lazy patterns on my back through the silk. Tell me about Emma, he said softly into the darkness. Tell me about your daughter. So I did. I told him about the day she was born, so small and perfect it hurt to look at her. About her first word, her first steps, her obsession with fairy tales and happy endings. About the day we'd gotten the diagnosis, how the world had stopped spinning and I'd understood for the first time what it meant to truly, desperately love someone more than your own life. He listened without interrupting, his arms tightening around me as I spoke. And when I finally fell silent, my voice raw from unshed tears, he pressed a kiss to the top of my head. She'll live, he promised. I swear it on everything I am, Sarah. Emma will live, and she'll have the happy ending she deserves. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly it physically hurt. I must have fallen asleep, because when I opened my eyes again, pale morning light filtered through the curtains. Dmitri was gone, but a note lay on his pillow, written in bold, decisive handwriting. Had to attend to business. Victor will take you to the hospital. Emma's first treatment starts at 9 a.m. I'll join you there when I can. D. The hospital felt different now, or maybe I was different. Victor walked beside me through the corridors, and I watched as nurses and doctors who'd barely noticed me before suddenly stepped aside, their eyes wide with recognition or fear or respect. Word had spread somehow that I was with Dmitri Rothschild, that I was under his protection, that I was his. Emma was awake, playing with a stuffed bear that definitely hadn't been there yesterday. When she saw me, her face lit up like sunshine. "Mommy, look what someone sent me. And Dr. Martinez says I'm starting my new medicine today." She hugged the bear tight. "It's going to make me better, right? So I can go home?" "Yes, baby." I gathered her close, breathing in her strawberry scent, blinking back tears. "You're going to get better, I promise." Dr. Martinez appeared in the doorway, his expression a mix of professional concern and barely concealed curiosity. Behind him, nurses wheeled in equipment for Emma's first treatment, bags of clear fluid that would either save her life or, at the very least, give us more time. "Ms. Chen, if I could speak with you for a moment?" I followed him into the hallway, Victor's presence a silent shadow at my back. Dr. Martinez glanced at the massive bodyguard, then back at me, clearly uncertain how to proceed. "Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of Victor," I told him, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "Very well." He cleared his throat. "I wanted to thank you, or whoever you know, for making this possible. The pharmaceutical company not only accepted Emma into the trial, they've also assigned one of their top specialists to oversee her care personally. This kind of treatment, this level of attention, it's unprecedented for someone not in their immediate family or major donor circle. She'll have the best care," I said softly, echoing Dimitri's promise. "Whatever she needs." "Yes, I can see that." Dr. Martinez's eyes were kind but knowing. "Just be careful, Sarah. Men who can arrange miracles like this with a single phone call are powerful. And power always comes with strings." I thought of Dimitri's arms around me last night, of the gentleness in his touch, of the promise in his eyes. I know what I'm doing, but even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. The treatment took hours. I sat beside Emma's bed, holding her small hand while the experimental drug dripped into her veins. She was brave, so much braver than me, only whimpering a little when the nausea hit, only crying once when the headache got too bad. I was so focused on her that I didn't hear him enter, didn't know he was there until his hand settled on my shoulder, warm and grounding. "How is she?" Dimitri's voice was soft, meant only for me. I looked up to find him standing beside me, still in his suit from whatever business had required his attention. There was no blood this time, but something in his eyes told me the morning had been difficult, dangerous. "She's strong," I whispered. "Stronger than me." He crouched beside my chair, bringing himself level with Emma's sleeping form. For a long moment, he just watched her, his expression unreadable. Then his hand found mine, lacing our fingers together. "She has your courage," he said quietly. "Your determination. She'll fight this, and she'll win. I'll make sure of it. You can't control everything, Dmitri." The words slipped out, exhaustion making me honest. "Not even you." His smile was sad, knowing. "No, but I can control what I can control. The doctors, the medicine, the security. I can make sure she has every advantage, every chance." He squeezed my hand. "Let me do this, Sarah. Let me give you both what you need." I wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some illusion of independence, of not being completely dependent on him. But Emma stirred in her sleep, her small face so pale against the hospital pillows, and I knew I'd already lost that battle. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." He stood, pulling me up with him, then wrapped me in his arms. I should have resisted, should have maintained some distance. But I was so tired, so scared, so completely overwhelmed that I just let myself sink into his warmth. "You're not alone anymore," he murmured against my hair. "You understand that, don't you? You and Emma, you're mine now. That means you'll never face anything alone again. Not fear, not pain, not uncertainty. I'm here, Sarah. I'm not going anywhere. And standing there in that hospital room, wrapped in the arms of a dangerous man I barely knew, I realized that for the first time in years, I actually believed someone might keep their promise. 3 weeks changed everything. Emma's color returned first, a slow bloom of pink in her cheeks that made my heart soar every time I saw it. Then her energy, coming back in small bursts that grew longer each day. By the end of the 2nd week, she was sitting up without help, laughing at the cartoons playing on the massive television Dimitri had installed in her new private room. By the 3rd week, Dr. Martinez was using words like remarkable and unprecedented response, and genuine hope. But while Emma's world expanded with health and possibility, mine contracted into something I didn't quite recognize. The penthouse had become my entire universe. Dimitri insisted I stay there, insisted Emma needed me close when she was finally discharged, insisted it was safer. And maybe it was. Victor and his team of silent, dangerous men were always present, always watching, always ensuring that nothing and no one could threaten what Dimitri had claimed as his, including me. I woke each morning wrapped in Dimitri's arms. He'd kept his word about not forcing anything physical, but his need to touch me, to hold me, to keep me close had only intensified. His hands found me constantly. At breakfast, when he'd pull me onto his lap while reading business reports. In the evening, when he'd tuck me against his side on the leather sofa. At night, when he'd wrap himself around me like I might disappear if he let go. "You're thinking too much," he murmured now, his fingers tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. We lay in bed, the morning sun painting gold across the white sheets. I can feel it. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. The lie tasted bitter. Emma's getting better. That's all that matters. But? His hand stilled, then cupped my face, turning it toward him. Those ice blue eyes saw too much. Always too much. "Tell me, Sarah. Whatever it is, we'll fix it." "You can't fix everything, Dimitri." I tried to pull away, but his arms tightened, keeping me caged against his chest. "And I'm not broken. I need space. I need to breathe." Something dark flickered across his features. "Space. Yes, space. I haven't left this penthouse except to visit Emma in 3 weeks. I have no job, no purpose. No, your purpose is here." His voice had gone cold, controlled. "With me. With Emma. Safe or trapped." The words burst out before I could stop them. Because it's starting to feel like a very expensive prison, Dimitri. Beautiful, yes. Comfortable, yes. But still a prison. He went completely still, and I felt the danger radiating off him in waves. When he spoke, his voice was soft. That terrible, lethal softness that Victor's men feared more than shouting. "A prison," he repeated. "I've given you everything. Your daughter's life, financial security, protection, my bed, my name, and you call it a prison. I didn't ask for your name," my heart hammered. But I couldn't back down now. "You said I had a choice, but every day that choice feels smaller. You decide what I wear, where I go, who I see. You've fired the cleaning company so I can't even go back to work if I wanted to. I've kept you safe." He rolled on top of me, pinning me to the mattress with his weight, his hands capturing my wrists and pressing them into the pillows above my head. "Do you have any idea how many people would love to hurt you to get to me? How many enemies I've made building my empire? How many men would use you and Emma as leverage if they knew what you mean to me?" "What do I mean to you?" I demanded, fighting against his hold even though I knew it was useless. "Really, Dimitri? Because from where I'm lying, I'm just another possession, something you acquired and now refuse to let go." His eyes blazed, and for a moment I saw the violence in him, the darkness he usually kept leashed. Then, shockingly, he released my wrists and rolled away, sitting on the edge of the bed with his back to me. "Get dressed," he said quietly. "I'll show you what you mean to me." The warehouse district looked like something out of a nightmare. Crumbling buildings, broken windows, streets that smelled of rust and desperation. Victor drove us in the armored Mercedes, 2 more cars full of guards flanking us, and I sat in the back seat beside Dimitri, my stomach churning with dread. "Where are we going?" I asked for the 3rd time. "You wanted to understand my world," Dimitri said, his voice flat. "You wanted to know why I keep you locked away. I'm going to show you." The car stopped in front of a warehouse that looked abandoned. But when Victor opened the door, I could hear sounds from inside. Muffled voices, someone crying, the crack of something that might have been a fist against flesh. "Dimitri," I started, but he was already out of the car, his hand extended toward me. Not a request, a command. I took his hand because I had no choice, and he led me inside. The warehouse was a cathedral of horrors. Men tied to chairs, faces bloodied, guards with guns standing at attention. And in the center, kneeling on the concrete floor with his hands bound behind his back, was a man I'd never seen before. Young, maybe 30, with terror written across his features. "This," Dimitri said, his voice echoing in the cavernous space, "is Marcus Chen, your cousin. Third removed on your father's side. Did you know you had a cousin, Sarah?" I shook my head, unable to speak, unable to process what I was seeing. Neither did I. Until 3 days ago, when he approached one of my business partners with a proposition. He claimed he could provide access to you and Emma, that he knew your schedule, your routines, your vulnerabilities. Dimitri's hand tightened on mine, painful now. He was going to sell information about you to my enemies for $50,000. The world tilted. "What?" "This is why you don't leave the penthouse, Sarah." Dimitri's voice was ice and fury. "This is why I keep you close. Because people like him exist. Because you and Emma are targets now, whether you like it or not. Because I made you mine, and in my world, that makes you a weapon to be used against me." Marcus was sobbing now, words tumbling out about debt and desperation and not meaning any harm. The same words I'd used when I'd called Dimitri that first night, the same desperation I'd felt, just pointed in a different direction. "What are you going to do to him?" I whispered. Dimitri looked at me, and something in his expression shifted. "That depends on you." "On me?" "You're mine, Sarah. That makes this your decision as much as mine. He was going to betray you, sell you out, put Emma in danger for money." His thumb brushed across my knuckles, an almost gentle gesture in this place of violence. "What do you think should happen to someone who threatens what's yours?" I stared at Marcus, at his tear-stained face, at the terror in his eyes. I thought about Emma, about how close we'd come to losing her, about how this stranger would have used us as currency in a world I didn't understand. But I also thought about desperation, about making impossible choices, about how I'd sold myself to save my daughter, and how maybe Marcus had been in his own version of that same hell. "Let him go," I said quietly. Dimitri's eyes widened, genuine surprise flickering across his features. "Sarah, let him go. But make sure he understands what will happen if he ever tries anything like this again. Make sure he knows that Emma and I are under your protection, and that protection extends to mercy." Once, I looked up at Dimitri, meeting his ice-blue gaze without flinching. "Your father taught you that everyone has a price, but maybe it's time to teach a different lesson. That mercy can be more powerful than fear." For a long moment, the warehouse was silent, except for Marcus's ragged breathing. Then Dimitri's lips curved into something that was almost a smile. "Victor," he called out. "Cut him loose. Give him $10,000 and a warning. He gets one chance. If he wastes it, he doesn't get a second." Victor looked shocked. Everyone looked shocked, but they obeyed. Within minutes, Marcus was stumbling out of the warehouse, clutching cash and looking back at us like he couldn't believe he was still alive. Dimitri turned to me, his hand cupping my face with a gentleness that contradicted everything around us. "You continue to surprise me, little ghost." "I'm not a ghost anymore," I said softly. "You made sure of that. But I'm also not you, Dimitri. I can't live in a world where violence is the answer to everything. If you want me, really want me, then you have to accept that. Accept that I'll always choose mercy when I can. That I'll always look for the decimal point error instead of the execution." His eyes searched mine, and I saw the war happening behind them, between the man his father had raised and the man he was trying to become. Finally he nodded. "Then teach me," he murmured. "Teach me how to be the man who deserves you." Emma came home on a Tuesday. The penthouse had been transformed. A bedroom decorated like a princess castle, toys and books. and everything a 7-year-old girl could want. But more than that, there was life here now. Light. Laughter. She ran through the rooms with an energy I hadn't seen in months, her thin legs growing stronger every day, her smile bright enough to rival the sun. And Dmitri, dangerous, ruthless Dmitri Rothschild, watched her with an expression of such fierce protectiveness it made my chest ache. "She's beautiful," he said softly, standing beside me in the doorway while Emma played with a dollhouse that probably cost more than a car. "Like her mother. Thank you." I turned to face him, this man who'd saved my daughter and claimed my life and was slowly, impossibly, working his way into my heart. "For all of this. For everything. You don't need to thank me." His arms wrapped around my waist, pulling me back against his chest. "You're mine. Taking care of what's mine isn't something that requires gratitude. It's just what I do. I'm not a possession, Dmitri," but the words had no heat in them anymore. "I'm a person. A partner. If this is going to work, if we're going to work, you need to understand that. I'm trying." His lips brushed against my temple. "You make me want to try, Sarah. You and Emma. You make me want to be better than what I was raised to be." Over the following weeks, something shifted between us. The guards were still there, but Dmitri began trusting me with more freedom. I could leave the penthouse with Victor, could visit the hospital to volunteer, could start reclaiming pieces of the person I'd been before desperation had driven me to make a deal with a devil. Except Dmitri was starting to feel less like a devil and more like a man. A complicated, dangerous, surprisingly tender man who read Emma bedtime stories with the same intensity he brought to business negotiations, who held me at night like I was precious, who was learning, slowly, to loosen his grip without letting go completely. "I love you," he said one night, the words so quiet I almost missed them. We were in bed, Emma asleep in her princess room down the hall, the city lights painting patterns across the ceiling. I'd been drifting towards sleep, but those 3 words snapped me awake. "Dmitri." "You don't have to say it back." His hand found mine in the darkness, lacing our fingers together. "I know I don't deserve it. I know I've done terrible things, that I've controlled you, that I've been exactly the monster you accused me of being. But I love you, Sarah. I love your courage and your compassion, and the way you see decimal point errors that everyone else misses. I love how you chose mercy for a man who would have betrayed you. I love that you're teaching me to be better, even when I fight it." He pressed a kiss to my knuckles. "You don't have to love me back. Just don't leave. Stay. Let me keep trying to be the man you deserve." Tears burned behind my eyes, because somewhere between the fear and the bargains and the desperate need to save my daughter, I'd fallen for him too, for the gentleness hidden beneath the violence, for the vulnerability he showed only to me, for the way he loved Emma like she was his own. "I do," I whispered. "Love you. I don't know when it happened or how, but I do. You frustrating, possessive, impossible man, I love you." His breath caught, and then he was kissing me, not gentle this time, but hungry, desperate, full of everything we'd been holding back, and for the first time since I'd agreed to be his, I gave myself to him completely. Not out of obligation or gratitude or fear, but because I wanted to, because he was mine as much as I was his. Because love, I was learning, was its own kind of decimal point error. Something small that changed everything. 6 months later, Doctor. Martinez gave us the news we'd been praying for. Emma was in full remission. I cried in Dimitri's arms while Emma danced around the hospital room, completely oblivious to the miracle she represented. Victor, stoic, scary Victor, had tears in his eyes. And Dmitri held me tight, his face buried in my hair, his shoulders shaking with relief so profound it made him vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. "She's going to be okay," I kept saying, unable to believe it. "She's really going to be okay, because of you," Dmitri murmured. "Because you saw what no one else could see. Because you saved me, and I saved her, and now we're all saving each other. That night, he asked me to marry him. Not with a public proposal or a massive ring or any of the grand gestures I might have expected from a man like him. Just us, in the darkness of our bedroom, his hand holding mine, his voice steady, despite the fear I could hear underneath. "Marry me," he said. "Not because of obligation or gratitude or because I demand it, but because I love you, because Emma needs a father who will protect her the way you protect her. Because I want to wake up every morning for the rest of my life with you in my arms. Because you make me want to be better. And I don't want to try to be better without you." I looked at this man who'd terrified me, claimed me, possessed me, and ultimately loved me with an intensity that would have been frightening if it wasn't so absolutely mutual. I thought about the girl I'd been 6 months ago. Invisible, desperate, drowning. And the woman I was now. Strong, protected, loved. "Yes," I said, "but on one condition." His eyes narrowed. "What condition?" "You keep trying, keep learning, keep choosing mercy when you can. Keep being the man Emma believes you are. The one who reads her stories and checks for monsters under her bed and promises her that happy endings are real." I cupped his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. "Be that man, Dimitri. Not just for me, but for yourself. Because you deserve the happy ending too." His smile was soft, genuine, free of the darkness that usually haunted it. "Deal, little ghost, though you're not much of a ghost anymore." "No," I agreed, pulling him down for a kiss. "I'm not. You made sure of that. You made me visible. You were always visible to me," he murmured against my lips. "From the moment I saw you standing at my desk, shaking with fear but brave enough to point out my mistake. You were the only real thing in my world. Sarah. You still are." We married 3 months later in a private ceremony with only Emma, Victor, and a handful of Dimitri's most trusted people present. Emma was flower girl, her dark hair finally growing back thick and glossy, her smile bright enough to light up the entire world. She walked down the aisle scattering rose petals, then stood beside us while we exchanged vows that promised protection and partnership and the kind of love that grew from impossible circumstances. Later, at the reception held in the penthouse that was finally, truly home, Emma tugged on Dimitri's sleeve. He bent down, and she whispered something in his ear that made him smile. A real smile, the kind that transformed his whole face. "What did she say?" I asked. "She said thank you for saving her mommy, and for being her daddy now." His eyes were suspiciously bright. "And she made me promise that we'll all live happily ever after, just like in her stories." I looked around the penthouse, at Emma laughing with Victor, at the life we'd built from desperation and decimal points and impossible choices, at the man who'd started as my captor and become my salvation. "We will," I promised, taking his hand. "We already are." Because sometimes I'd learned the happiest endings came from the darkest beginnings. Sometimes salvation wore the face of danger, and sometimes love was just like a decimal point, a small thing that changed everything, if you were brave enough to notice it. The mistake that had brought us together had become the foundation of something beautiful, something real, something that would last. And as Dimitri pulled me close, and Emma crashed into both of us with a hug that nearly toppled us over, I knew that I'd made the right choice that night in the restaurant, that my yes had led us here, to love, to family, to a future I'd never dared to imagine. I'd started as a ghost, invisible and desperate, but Dimitri had seen me, had claimed me, had loved me into visibility, and I had saved him right back, not just from bankruptcy, but from the darkness that would have consumed him if he'd never learned that mercy could be powerful, that love could be healing, that some mistakes were actually the best things that ever happened. We had found our happy ending, not perfect, but real, not without shadows, but full of light. And it had all started with a decimal point and a maid who couldn't walk away from a mistake.